The Mental Health is a Lifestyle podcast is not a substitute for a relationship with your mental health professional. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Mental Health is a Lifestyle podcast with your girl, Andrea Wise Brown. Wait, before we get into it, because guys, I have a special guest. And y'all are going to love this one. I have a special guest, but before I introduce her, this powerful being, I just have to ask you to do some work. So y'all know what I need you to do if you haven't done so already. Click this little subscribe button, subscribe to the podcast, and then click that bell so that you get notifications when there's another episode up. All right. Okay, family. So, check that off. We did that. So now today, I need and I want to introduce you to, here we go. Listen, let me tell you something. I don't want to screw this up, but I know, my sister, that if I do, you're going to correct me, and I love every minute of it. But let me try. Okay, so I am introducing you guys to, family, Dr. Tanginika Cuascud. Cuascud. There we go. Cuascud. And so she's named or called Dr. Tangie. So can I call you Dr. Tangie? Can we call you Dr. Tangie?
Absolutely. I love it.
Okay, good. Okay, so here's some background, family, on Dr. Tangie. As she is known, as Dr. Tangie, she is a clinical sexologist, sexual health educator, and surrogate partner therapy facilitator, founder and principal of Texas Sexual Health in North Texas, the only multidisciplinary practice in North Texas that addresses the physiological, psychological, and environmental causes of sexual dissatisfaction, and which integrates sex therapy, sexual medicine, and pelvic health. Oh, I'm so into this. She works with individuals and couples of any sex orientation or identity and uses a multidisciplinary and sex positive approach to find solutions for sexual dysfunction and intimacy concerns so people can live the sex life they envision and deserve. She is board certified by the American Board of Sexologists, is a member of the International Society on Sexual Medicine, and serves in its education committee, which develops curricula and guidelines in sexual medicine. She is also a member of the World Association on Sexual Health and is an ambassador of the American Sexual Health Association. Currently, she is the VP of the Association of Hispanic Leaders. She has been a contributor for multiple magazines, radio, and TV shows, and her expert advice has been featured in several publications and news outlets in the USA and all over the world. And her research in human sexuality has reached academics and healthcare professionals worldwide. Family, y'all better clap for that.
Thank you.
Thank
you very much.
Absolutely. Listen, Dr. Tangie, that is fabulous. So I want to start off by at least just bringing in my family as to how I met you. You and I sat on a panel. Maybe, I don't know, we just said, I know it was before the pandemic. And so I know you said it was probably about 4 years ago.
It was actually in October of 2019.
Oh, come on now. Get me together, Dr. Tangie. So we sat on a panel together, And it was amazing. It was amazing. You were amazing. And after it was over, we talked, and I said to you,
Uh-huh.
I said, one day I want to do some work with you. I said, one
Yes.
day, I want us to do something. You was like, take my number. So anywho, this is the day. And I have been reaching out to you, and you are a busy woman, honey, about the world. And so now, this week on this day, it worked. And so I am so grateful for you to be here. I literally sent out a notification that I had the sex doctor, because you are called the sex doctor. Am I
Yes.
correct?
I
Yes.
yes, in social media, I am the sex doctor.
Okay, good. Yeah. And remind me, because I want to give everybody your social media handles. So we have to do that when this is over. Okay. But I can just start off. So maybe while they're listening, they just may want to find you. So it is the sex doctor.
The sex doctor, yes. YouTube is the sex doctor, and Instagram is the sex doctor RX, like a prescription. So what I
Okay.
prescribe as a sex doctor.
I love it, love it, love it. Yeah. And this is so good because I didn't even know all of that was in your background, all of that was in your bio. I just loved your energy and your intelligence. And I said, I want to have a conversation with this woman. So I'm so happy to be here. But anywho, I sent out notifications. I said, okay, so I'm interviewing with the sex doctor. Do y'all have any questions? When I tell you, Dr. Tangie, those questions were coming in. So hopefully, you are open to educating the masses here today on the Mental Health is a Lifestyle podcast. Are you open for it?
I love it. Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, because mental health for me is paramount. Mental health is actually one of the most important aspects of health. I am so happy that you are highlighting that, and that you are saying what you're saying, that you have an outlet and a platform for that messaging, that mental health is a lifestyle, mental health should be a priority. We know when our minds go, everything else goes with it. I can live without a limb. I can live without a finger. I can live without, a piece of something. I can live without one of my lungs, part of my liver, whatever else. But when the mind goes, your life quality really, really decreases and diminishes. And so we have to really make sure that we're taking care of our most important organ, which is between our ears, which is our brain. And that is the most important organ also for sex. So we're on the same
Oh,
page.
oh, we on the same page. Because you know what, Dr. Tangi? So when you just said it's the most important organ between our ears, the first thing I thought about was how we gonna talk about these organs also between our legs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I love how you
Absolutely.
say that it connects back to the brain. And I always say
Yes.
that I do believe that sex is, at 90% of the libido for sex is up here in the head. I am a practicing psychotherapist. However, my specialty is family of origin trauma. So that's what I do in my practice, family of origin trauma. So I am the girl to help you peel back the layers of the onion, get to the root cause of why you're finding so much dysfunction in your life currently. And I believe we need to go
Mm-hmm.
back to the core root. And so that's what I do, right? However, when people come to me, and even couples and individuals, sometimes they do have issues with sex. So, I can kind of talk about that and relate it back to maybe some childhood stuff or whatever. However, my specialty is family of origin trauma. Your specialty is sex. So you are the expert here today, my love, and I want to give you this platform. Um, yeah. So I have to start off by asking you, why sex? Why is sex your specialty?
Yes, that's a great question. And I think everybody is very curious always to know, like, how on earth, out of all the topics and all the things that you could have done with your life, why is sex your journey? Why is sex your path? And it really goes back to even my own development, probably. I hit puberty very, very early. I started puberty at 5. And so I had a very unusual relationship with my body. You know, what I tell people is I was born and you don't live in your body. You don't know how you look like. You know, you're just playing and being a toddler. You're just playing and being a kid. And then all of a sudden, out of toddlerhood, not quite, because 5 years it's still considered to be kind of a toddler. I have a body that is sprawling. I have boobs. I have pubic hair. I am growing. And everything is just developing. I did not understand what was going on. Medically, it was probably not handled in the best way possible, but that's another story. The thing is that I had this body that I did not understand, that everybody saw around me as something that I couldn't see in myself because I'm a 5-year-old. And everybody seeing me like I have this woman like body. I have these features in my body that are already like a grown up. And so that also helps you mature, or forces you to mature, not only because you're dealing with the looks and the comments of other people regarding your body, and you're being prodded and you're being studied and you're being basically focused on almost like a lab animal, but at the same time, hormonally, I was, ahead of the curve when it comes to development also, because, these are hormones also that are going on. They're making my brain mature faster. And so I always also had this curiosity about just humans and romance and humans and how they reproduce. Now, also, I come from a very, very strict, very uptight, very traditional, conservative Hispanic household in Puerto Rico. And my message, especially since I developed so early, was do not get pregnant. That was the worst thing that could ever happen to a woman. Do not get pregnant. And that's the message that I got in my household. That was kind of the talk. That was kind of the law. You don't get pregnant. If you get pregnant, it's a very bad outcome for you. You're an outcast. And so that was the messaging in my home. It was everything was done to protect us from getting pregnant. Now, I didn't know how you get pregnant. And
Of
so
course not.
and because I started my development so early and I got my period so early and everything, the more mature girls around me kept telling me, oh, now you're a woman, you can get pregnant, you can have a baby. And so I am being given and fed the information that getting pregnant is the worst thing that can ever happen to you. I'll kill you if you do.
Mhm.
And oh, you're a woman now, you can get pregnant. And so I was terrified of the whole thing.
I could see
And
that because
so,
I'm sorry, but there was no one there to actually, well, no one wanted to educate you on how
mhm.
to get pregnant. Okay, go
How
ahead.
do you even, I mean, what does that even mean exactly? And I didn't know how babies got in the womb. I didn't even know how babies came out. I just thought, you had a surgery and they took the baby out, and that's what you did. But I started seeing my girlfriends in my environment at 14 years old starting to get pregnant. I am the result of teen pregnancy as well.
Okay.
And so, and there's a history of in my family, the females getting pregnant during their teenage years. School was basically one of my saviors. I was
Mhm.
academically bright and I had a very promising future. I liked being in school. I loved going to school. And so I knew I didn't want to run that fate. I knew that I didn't want to be like my friends who had to abandon their schooling because of their pregnancies and get married. And it seemed that it was not a good cycle to have. And
Mhm.
eventually, all of them at 15, 16, 17 years old, they continued to get pregnant, have babies. And I knew I didn't want to do that. But I was always very curious, like, okay, so how do you do that? And what leads to that? And obviously at 14 years old, when they say, well, I'm having sex, I'm like, well, what is that like? And I was very curious about it. I took at 12 years old in my biology class, reproductive biology. I think that's one of the also things that really piqued my interest in the topic, because I was fascinated by just reproduction in general. And then later on, I took in 12th grade a health class in which the teacher, she was fresh out of school, she was young, she was cool, we could relate to her, and she really, really explained to us, like, how does that work? How does this happen? And that was the first time in my life in which I knew something that I didn't know about sex and relationships, and it was wonderful. Something that I discovered was that sex was this one thing that everybody was doing, that as a culture we joked about, everybody was kind of after it, but at the same time it brought about a lot of discomfort, pain, suffering, even disease sometimes. And
Yes.
so I was just dumbfounded about the whole thing. Why, if it's so good, it can
Mm.
lead to such poor outcomes for people? I started writing for this magazine that gave me this opportunity to write for them. And I told them, I want to write about sex. And I am still in the academic world. So I was writing for 4 magazines on women's sexual health, men's sexual health, etc. And people started asking me questions about sex. And at that point, I realized, as an academic and as a researcher, I decided to go to school, do another doctorate degree so I could come back and be a clinician in sex. That's a long story on how this came about. And I'm so
No,
happy
it's
that
good.
this came full circle and I found my passion. I am like a fish in the water with this topic, and I absolutely love every day of it.
Oh, that's so good. No apology there. I love the story. Listen, this is what I do. I love a story. And especially I love it when we begin our journey and become aligned with our purpose here on this earth. And to me, that's what it sounds like. But also as I'm listening to you, it's kind of like as a child, your parents or everyone around you, your culture is telling you what you shouldn't do, don't do, don't do, don't do. And then what that does in our brain psychology, it makes us want to look at that even more. Like it makes the target for that even more. So you became more interested. That's just my thought as I'm over here thinking, but I freaking love it. Okay.
And
So this
luckily
is
for
so
me, that I became interested in a healthy way. As you say, when you deny something, when you suppress something, it may become a bigger and more prominent, more attractive target. And in my case, it was a
to this.
positive target. It was not the negative, probably curiosities that led many to get into trouble.
Okay, Dr. Tangi. So you ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay, you ready. But I'll just open up with this. Okay. So, um, hmm. Can lasers and yoni balls tighten? Can they really tighten the vagina?
Well, actually, it's funny because I trained in laser, in vaginal laser, and so there's two different mechanisms working there when it comes to lasering the vagina, and when it comes to using the yoni balls or the Benwa balls, those kinds of things for the vagina. So they're doing two separate things. One of the things that the lasers are doing, they're working with tissue. So they're not working with the structures that necessarily tighten the vagina as it pertains to muscle. So in the vagina, if you want to talk about the vagina is its own organ. The vagina is a tube. People call the vulva a vagina, and this is my PSA. People call the vagina or the vulva a vagina, but it's the vulva. The vagina is the canal. It's like that tube that goes in. You only see its opening in the outside. If you see the vagina, which is the tube coming out, that's a medical emergency. Go to your nearest emergency room. That's actually a medical emergency. You should never see your vagina. Your vagina goes in, and the lasers go in and around the tissue around the vagina. So that is supposed to help, and there's medical studies. Probably we don't have very hard science to support this. However, what the lasers do is work at the tissue level around, obviously, the walls of the vagina. So due to aging and other factors, those walls and hormonal factors, those walls can become thin, dry, and atrophied. And so what the lasers are doing is improving the quality of that tissue. Now, you have to be very careful with lasers. I know that this is not necessarily the outlet probably for this length of a topic. However, just be mindful and do your research when it comes to lasering that area, because it can lead to burns and it can have very bad outcomes for you. But that's how it's working. Benwa balls and yoni balls, etc., are literally that, balls that you insert in the vagina. You can insert 1 or 2, and you have to keep them tight, those muscles tight, so the balls don't slide down. That is working at the muscle level, not the skin level, if that makes sense. So what it's doing is the supportive structures around your vagina and your reproductive organs. It's called the pelvic floor muscles. Those muscles have to have a certain tone in order for things to work right. And so those balls force you to clench the muscles so the balls don't slide down. If you don't, you start walking or you get up and the balls just lie down. And that is basically a way of providing your own biofeedback when doing something like Kegel exercises. And Kegel exercises are the contractions and relaxation that you do with those muscles to create probably a tighter environment. Now, you have to be very careful with those as well, because if you tighten the muscles too much, then you create problems. If they're too lax, you create problems. So we call them the Goldilocks muscles, because they have to be just right. They can't be
Okay.
too on either side. So that's what they're doing. So if you have issues with like urinary incontinence, or you have issues with vaginal laxity, that's not necessarily something that the vast majority of women will deal with. However, some women feel like, well, maybe after I had a baby or something, my muscles are just, or my vagina is not as tight. And probably what they mean is the muscles. It's not necessarily the structure, the vagina as an organ. So yes, they're good to tighten the muscles, but you have to be careful not to overdo it, because then you can't tighten them too much, and then that creates other issues for you. But obviously, if you're going to do any of these therapies, the Benwa balls or the Yoni balls, something that you can buy, purchase on your own, do it yourself. The lasers are something that you have to go and pursue. Sometimes just aesthetic clinics will have it. I would go with a professional that really knows what they're doing and knows that structure, because again, you don't want to like create burns and other issues. And the Benwa balls, I will just use them knowing that if I go too far, I may be creating problems for myself. We don't want the vagina to hold a bottle, or I don't know if you have seen videos or pictures of women like hanging things from their vagina, like very heavy things, and they just clench those muscles, and that, weight, that bottle, whatever it is, just stays there. That's too much. We don't want to strangle anything with our vaginas.
No, heck no. Hell to the no. And no, I've never seen that.
Well,
But okay.
now everybody knows, so go look for those videos.
But don't do it. Don't you do
Don't
it.
do it.
Okay. Okay. Next question. Clitoral sensitivity. Can you regain it back? Like at its highest level? Can you ever regain clitoral sensitivity back?
Okay, so great question. I am loving that people are asking these questions. These are the questions that I always tell people you don't have the outlets to really ask and get answers, right? So I'm
Mm-hmm.
loving that people are so open and like really ask anything. I am a ask me anything kind of girl. Okay, so the clitoris. So there's a few reasons why the clitoris may lose sensitivity. Number one, it could be due to hormonal changes. And so the hormonal changes that come with menopause or after childbirth, sometimes with surgical menopause or induced menopause. So it doesn't have to necessarily be the natural progression of just aging and menopause. The clitoris can become less sensitive. The clitoris can become less sensitive also due to, and listen to me, ladies, due to an overuse of vibrators. So there are ladies who use their vibrators. I'm not telling you that your vibrators are your best friends. If you want to use them, totally fine. However, you have to be very mindful because the more the clitoris gets used to the high, very intense vibrators, the less sensitive it can become, and the more and more sensation or vibration and force you will have to use. I have been asked, like, can you use some of those vibrators that you use for your neck and for your back and your clitoris? And I say, absolutely not. So the
Boom.
clitoris is comprised of at least 10,000 nerve endings. That's compared to the penis that has 4,000. So you can imagine it's not as small as people think, but it is a smaller structure compared to the penis. And you have a penis that, is tubular as well, but has 4,000 nerve endings around that whole structure. We have 10,000 at least that have been identified in a tinier place. So that's why for women, the clitoris is such a powerful and important sexual organ, is the only organ in the body that has been created and designed for no other purpose than sexual pleasure. Is the one organ in the body. The males don't have this. Males pee with their penises, reproduce with their penises, have orgasms and ejaculate through their penises. For women, we have just one job for that tiny little organ, which is our sexual pleasure. We can reproduce, we can urinate, we can bring babies into this world without the clitoris. We don't need it, but it is there only for that reason. So you have 10,000 nerve endings. What happens when you overstimulate an area? The nerves become so saturated with sensation that they shut down because you just can't take all that. And so every time you're increasing and increasing and increasing the pressure, the vibration, the force in order to gain sensation, you are shutting those nerves even more. Again, they can't take it. This is a lot. So to regain sensation, if it's hormonal related, you definitely have to talk to your healthcare provider. If it's menopause related, please go and seek somebody who knows about menopause and is certified by the North American Menopause Society, because they're the physicians, the practitioners that will know. Many other practitioners don't know. The vast majority will not know this information, but somebody who's certified in menopause, they will know. So that's one of the ways. And another way is if you have become over sensitive or less sensitive due to overstimulation, I'm sorry, but you have to at least create a healthy separation between what's creating that overstimulation and your clitoris. And so, and I do that with men too. And so in my clinic, people come and visit me and they say, I'm having this problem. And I'm like, I'm so sorry, but we will have to divorce you for a little while from your source, because you have to develop new pathways. You have to get those nerves kind of reconnected. And we have to allow your body to basically relearn how to have orgasms and sensation without that overpowering stimulation. Another thing that can disconnect your sensation in your clitoris from your pleasure is actually your brain. So if you had any trauma, if you have anything going on in your head, this is very important. Your brain is your most important sex organ. It's your most important organ in general, but it is your most important sex organ. It's not your clit, it's not your vagina, it's not the penis, it's none of that. It's actually your brain. And if your brain is not engaged and connected, and if your brain is not up for it, it's not excited, it's not aroused, then your private parts will not be. So your brain has to be aroused before your body is aroused.
Okay. Oh, that's so good. That's so good. And that leads me to a couple more questions, but the next one I'm going to go to is from what I've heard from tons of clients that it is normal. So you correct me if I'm wrong. That it's more normal for women to climax from clitoral stimulation or oral sex than it is actual penetration with a penis. Is that correct or is it incorrect or have you heard that?
That is absolutely correct. So the studies that have been conducted, they show that up to 70% of women, they need the clitoral stimulation for orgasm, and about 30% of women are the ones who can orgasm through vaginal penetration. That number, obviously, we have these studies. We can't study every woman in the world, but at least that is something that we have. So basically, the vast majority of women will not be able to orgasm by just inserting something or thrusting something into their vagina. And when I explain this to women and to guys who don't understand this either, I say, well, it makes sense. So let's go to embryonic biology. Let's go, to when you were developed in the womb. So embryos start as females, if you didn't know that. So guys say, well, you girls have a tiny penis and that's a clitoris. I say, no, you guys have a large clitoris. And so because the embryos start as female. And later on, it's determined through different processes in the womb how you're going to come out, basically, and with what body parts, with what genital presentation. So if you have a guy who needs thrusting and stimulation in order to be able to orgasm and reach ejaculation, well, the same thing is for women. And so what makes you think that our clitoris are different than the penis? As I explained before, we have a structure that is it's actually similar to the penis. So the penis and the clitoris are the same thing, kind of in a different presentation. We have more nerve endings in that area than in any other area. So basically, the ones that should be humping are us. We're the ones who should be really humping and really creating friction in that area in order to be able to reach orgasm, because guys do. Guys go into the vagina or with a hand, anus, mouth, whatever, glory hole, whatever that is, and they rub, and that feels very, very good. And those 4,000 nerve endings allow them to then explode into an orgasm and ejaculate if they're able to. For women, they're expected to, oh, let me insert something in your vagina and go like this. And you're supposed to go like in the movies. Wow, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. And that's really not how the biology is made at all. So that 30% of women, I would say, if we did a universal study in which we could go after the 4 billion women in the world, I would say almost probably 90% of the women would tell you, like, no, for me, it's going to be clitoral only. So don't feel bad. There's nothing wrong with you if you need clitoral stimulation for orgasm. You're not broken.
That's
You
right.
are not defected. You are not an anomaly. You are normal and you're in the majority. Celebrate that.
Oh, that's so good. That's good. Okay, that's so good. Um, hmm. So here we go. I kind of feel like, I mean, I think men can learn from what we're saying too, but this was another question that I got. Hmm. And this was from a man. Uh, Okay. So if a man, that's what he said. I'm trying to make sure that it is appropriate. Okay, if a man likes butt play, I'll say butt
Mm-hmm.
play. Uh-huh. Does that necessarily mean that he's gay?
Hey, family, come on over here because I have something for you. Starting off with a go to guide for keeping your minds healthy and strong. This right here is the Bible to mental health. It's your mental health Bible. The name of it is Six Pillars to Power Up Your Mind and Make Mental Health a Lifestyle. Everything that you need to know about keeping your minds healthy and strong is in this go to guide. Where you get it from? Well, you get it from awisebrown.com/shop. But in this go-to guide, honey, in this mental health Bible, you know what you're going to find out? You're going to find out the benefits of aromatherapy. Oh, and how it can shift your mood. But guess what? You don't have to go anyplace else to look for your aromatherapy because your girls got you. Okay? You can get some aromatherapy here. This is aromatherapy is in this candle. This is called a slice of happiness. It makes me tingle, like literally makes me tingle. A slice of happiness. This is a cruelty-free candle with no parabens, no formaldehyde, and no known suspected carcinogenics. Now, you know, you go out here and you find these candles that smell good, but are they good for you? Are they good for your brain? Come on now, get real with yourself. Well, this one smells delicious and it's good for you. Made with essential oils. It's a soy candle. Amazing. You can burn it or you can just walk by and smell it. Lord have mercy, it's so good. Okay, so that's your candle, your aromatherapy, which raises the dopamine in your brain. That's your natural feel good neurotransmitters in your brain. All right, y'all. And I'm a part of you. You're a part of me. We are a family. We got hoodies now, and these are unisex hoodies, and they wear well, they wash well, and they feel so good. So you can wear them over your clothes, you know what I'm saying, and look dope, or you can wear them as your clothes with nothing under them, which I like to do often. And when you travel everywhere, I mean, every time I wear them, I'm moving around. People are always asking me whether I'm traveling, going to the supermarket. What's that? Who's that? And I'm like, mental health is a lifestyle. Because see, this is on the back. Okay? They come in white and they come in black. I'm like, join the family. Mental health is a lifestyle podcast. So there you go. Family, don't you ever say that I ain't give you nothing. You get all of these things from awisebrown.com/shop. All right? I got your goods. I got you. You don't have to go anyplace else. I'll see you on the other side.
Absolutely not. And I'm glad that this man is asking for a friend. So no, the answer is no. Basically what I tell people is if you like if you as a woman like oral sex, does that mean you're a lesbian? No. We have nerve endings that don't know what sex we are. Our nerve endings, our nervous system doesn't know what sex we are. Those are the gender norms and those are social constructs are independent of our biology. Okay? So our nerve endings don't know what sex we are. and they are in different areas, concentrated in different areas, and they do what they do. So around the anus, there's a cluster of nerves also that, upon stimulation to women and men, can feel very, very good. Okay? And the same can go for women as for men. Outside stimulation of those nerves can feel very pleasurable for a lot of people, and many people are totally indifferent to that kind of stimulation. Others are adverse to that stimulation, but usually it's because of something that is in their head, such as the comment of like, oh, well, I don't want that to be done because if I like it, then that means that I am something that I don't think I am. Especially guys, when it comes to those kinds of things, it can be, kind of get weird about it. So no. Another thing is that internal penetration of the anal structure can stimulate the prostate. The prostate, is a walnut-sized organ that's inside the guy's rectum, or it actually, you can access it through the rectal wall. You cannot access it directly. And just a lot of pleasure associated with stimulating the prostate for the same reason. Nerves. The nerves are concentrated in there. They connect actually to the penis. And so they feel very, very good sensations, and they develop very good feelings about it. It has nothing to do with whether or not you're gay or like men. It has to do with the fact that you have a prostate. And it has to do with the fact that you have all those nerve endings, those bundles of nerves in those areas. So no, my question is always, so when you look like a dude in the street, do you like the dude? No, I don't like men. I don't want to have a relationship with men. I don't want to have, I don't want to marry a man or anything. I just like stimulation in my butt. Okay, those are two separate life experiences. And what your butt is telling you is not, go ahead and like guys now, in the street. Now, if you want to insert things, you can commission a woman, you can do it yourself, or you can commission a man. I don't care. But you're after the sensation, you're after the pleasure, and there's nothing wrong with that. I just want people to do it safely. That's always my message. Whatever you're into, I don't want you to get into unethical things, and I don't want you to do things that will harm you. So I will help you manage with information so you can keep yourself and others around you safe.
Oh, that's so good. That's so, so good. Someone else asked a question um, about anal sex. And she said, why is it that some women like it and then some women, won't even touch it or are afraid of it? I think I know the answer, but if you want to answer that.
Yeah, probably multifaceted as well. Number one,
Mm-hmm.
maybe you haven't had the right partner for it, because it can be very tricky. So anal sex is not, it's not like vaginal sex, that, you lube up and you go in there, and with exceptions, because there are women who have difficulties with vaginal penetration. That's another topic. But pretty much, the vagina is more malleable, is open. It's kind of receptive to that kind of practice. The anus, it's a separate structure. It's tight. The sphincters, there's two sphincters in that structure that are meant to always be engaged to keep things from sliding out and escaping your body. Those two things are fecal matter and gas, right? You don't go around life unless you're old. Old people, they're like, I don't care, I'm going to fart, right? But unless you have any issues in that structure, you're not just running and walking around releasing everything that you have trapped inside. So those are always engaged and with a certain tone to prevent that from happening. And just because they are there in that tonic state or that high tone, just to prevent things from sliding out, they also prevent things from coming in if they are coming too suddenly, if they're invasive. So This is something that you have to exercise with a lot of caution. It's a delicate structure. You have to be very careful if you engage in these acts. So again, I always provide information. Lately, I've been having a lot of questions about anal sex. So there's a lot of content in my YouTube channel, The Sex Doctor, about it. So if you
Okay,
want
good.
and get yourself more informed, there's plenty of information in there. And so that's probably number one. You haven't had the right partner to really share this experience with. Maybe they're too rushed. They don't know about lubrication. They don't know about, relaxation techniques. So you can enjoy this. Number two is probably about also biology. Not everybody has the same sensations in the same parts. So for some people, nibbling in their ears will send them to frenzy and will make them orgasm. And for other people, you do exactly the same thing and they're totally indifferent. And for some people, you do that and it feels very, very bad.
Mm-hmm.
And they would push you away and be like, ew, like, what are you doing? So we don't have the same concentration of nerves everywhere in our bodies to elicit that erotic response. Another thing is also your own views. So if you view that, that's do not enter exit only, that is dirty, I would never, that is only for certain people, not me, etc., etc. And you already put barriers in your head that is not your jam. There's probably little that somebody else can do coming into that picture to persuade you to the opposite. So it has to do with your own thoughts and your own beliefs, how you're wired biologically, and finding the way of practicing this in a pleasurable way, whether it is by yourself or with somebody else.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, next question. Is it normal for women to have a low sex drive days leading up to their menstrual cycle?
It is normal if it's normal for you. Some women
Okay.
feel a decrease in that libido in the days prior, and some other women actually see the opposite. They see an increase, a kind of a sudden increase in their libido as their periods are about to start. So I always say, if you are in either camp, you are normal. And so, yes, it has to do with how the hormones work and what hormones you have more prominence of in that cycle, and also obviously how many or how much of these hormones you have concentrated when that cycle is happening. So yes, it is normal. And if you find yourself that you're kind of bloated and your mood decreases and all that, maybe you're not sexual, you're not ready for it, and that's totally okay.
Okay, good. So this is so I got a lot of questions on two different topics. So one, libido. Someone texted and asked about ages from ages 25 to 35. Like why is, what causes a decrease in sex drive or libidos in females and males? So that is a question that I do want to ask. And then I also want to follow up with the question about I learned some years ago in a class on relationships and sex from these from some studies that on average, this is what I learned in the United States, this was some years ago, that couples are having sex like twice a week. I mean, so some could be more and some could be, less, but they were saying on average that pretty much represents a healthy sex life 2 times a week. Now, that was then. So now this is now, sex doctor, Dr. Tangie. So I guess the first question is libido. Why is there decreased libido in females or males from ages, they said from ages specifically 25 to 35, because I guess they figure after that, menopause can play a part.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, great questions, and I love them. The first question about hormones. So men and women have the predominance of different hormones at different stages in life. And so for males specifically, maybe that has to do with their testosterone levels. So testosterone is very good for sex drive. And so usually when I see men who have decreased sex drives, excuse me, that has to do a lot with testosterone. When testosterone levels drop, then we see kind of that, their urges and their passion and their pursuit of sex diminishes as well. I don't want to confuse people, but in sexual science, we have different definitions for different things. So, sexual desire is what's in your head, and your sex drive is really what drives you, what the energy, the impetus that you have to pursue sexual activity. And so some people still continue to have the sexual thoughts and the sexual fantasies and all that. So that's your desire, but they don't necessarily have a drive. And so some people feel like, oh, my desire has disappeared completely. And it can happen to either or. Most times women are diagnosed with hypoactive sexual desire disorder. That's what it's called. However, this is very misleading because it almost means like only women suffer from this, but guys suffer from this at all. So when people come to my practice and they tell me like, I feel like my libido is low, and libido is probably like all of it. And I say, okay, so do you have sexual fantasies? Yes. When you see a lady in the supermarket, or when you see a guy on TV, that you like, are you still like, oh yeah, I would totally do it. I would totally go after that. And if your answer is yes, you still have desire. If you're still having the sexual thoughts, the sexual fantasies, and kind of, making, what I tell people is like making your own porn, right, in your head. Now, if that is not translating into you wanting to put forth the effort that it requires to masturbate and or have sex with somebody else that is not yourself, then yes, both of you, regardless of whether you're a man or a woman, you have low sex drive. And so that usually has to do with hormones. In men, that would be your testosterone, and in women, actually, that would be your testosterone as well. And so testosterone is kind of the one hormone that is responsible for giving you that that, oh wow, yes, I'm going after it. It's a very good hormone for pursuing, for giving you the energy to get up and look for what you want.
Come on now.
Now, another thing that we cannot ignore is that we are also deterred by routine, familiarity, and habituation, right? So, especially women, and many women feel like there's something wrong with me when in fact they're just bored in their relationship. And we have these romantic ideas about, well, if I love my mate, if I love my partner, if I love my husband, if I love my wife, I should be hot and bothered for them like all the time, or at least twice a week. Enough for me to do the duty and, pursue it like it on a regular basis. And if I don't feel that, there is something wrong with me. And literally, we don't talk about this enough. Women do tend to get bored easier than men in relationships. So the man will see the woman, men will go around, and there's a few skits on social media about it, which are very funny. They will want to grab your boobs. I'm not saying, please, guys, always check in. Don't do that. But can be very annoying. But anyways, grabbing the boobs, or they see the wife coming out of the shower and they're like, oh, wow, baby. And we don't have the same effect, or we don't have that. Like, we don't see them in underwear go like, ooh, right now, baby. Not all the time, not to that rate. And the more time goes by, especially depending on where we are in our cycle, because our cycle is very dependent also on hormones. And the hormones are telling us reproduce or not, right? It is time or it is not. And so there will be times when we're like, oh yeah, baby, come over here, let's do this. And then hormones drop and you're like totally indifferent. So that is among, the normalcy of the cycles of relationships, but also our biological cycles. So at 25 years old, yeah, you can have low libido, and at 35 you can have low libido. And not to give you a long-winded answer, but at 35 you can start perimenopause, and so that is also another factor that will lead to that sudden decrease, especially if that was not your norm. So if you're seeing things or feeling things that are not there, check in with yourself, your relationship status. Are you satisfied with the status of your relationship, the dynamic of your relationship? Are you still in partnership and attracted? Do you feel secure? Do you feel safe? Do you feel emotionally connected to your partner? Because that will also make the sex or your sexual desire more or less. If you're in a perpetual state of like, I am mad at this man, you're not going to be wanting to have sex with him. So I ask women when that happens, like, well, I don't want to have sex with him anymore. Maybe they've had babies. That's another thing. It's hormone related. And I say, well, if you saw Reggae Page, do you know who that is? Reggae Page from Bridgerton, the season 1.
Okay.
He is absolutely candy. This is a PSA. So if you see him, would you go for it? And
I had somebody else in my head, but go ahead.
yeah. No, I am trying. He's young. Usually I say people who are way too old and nobody understands me anymore. So
I got
trying
you.
to go for somebody who's a little bit more current. So Reggae Page. And I'm like, if you see Reggae Page, if he asked you out, like, would you? And they say, absolutely. I said, well, then it's definitely your relationship. It's not your hormones.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. And a lot of times resentment that's built up and just pushed down. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. I always say that. Yes.
Yes, honey. That will block sexual desire in a heartbeat. But let me ask this. Okay. So, okay. I love it when you said women, what you found is that women can potentially they get bored. They get bored with the sex. So what I'm wondering is, because this was another question, okay, is it healthy to use sex toys in your relationship with your partner? So someone asked the question, you said boredom. So I'm like, I'm wondering if this would be something that would be healthy to kind of re-engage the woman who sent that question. Dr. Tangie will answer the question on the next episode next week.